I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a spellbinding world that is portrayed in a wonderful book. It is called Triangles of Fate by John Chierichella. It is an amazing book that explores the intricate web of destiny and drama. It is set against the scenic backdrop of Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains, and we will explore how the author's real-life experiences have been woven into this gripping tale of fate and consequences. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Books to Life Marketing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. John, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your inspiration for the book.
Well, I was essentially nagged into writing this book by my wife. It's kind of a little bit of a funny story. We would watch movies on TV, and whenever the couple got into a romantic interlude, I would all of a sudden start sort of concocting a phony, somewhat salacious voiceover to describe what was going on in their minds or physically or whatever. And at one point, my wife turned to me and said, "Look, just stop, write the damn book." And that's actually how this book came about.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's give the folks at home an overview of what the book is about.
Okay. Well, this book is about the disintegration of a marriage. It's about a marriage in which love was only there on one side of the marriage. The wife never loved the husband, but she married him to find a haven from what was an unhappy upbringing, an unhappy childhood, an alcoholic family. He's a lawyer. He's a very successful lawyer in Washington, D.C. She is in the hospitality business in a resort in the Blue Ridge area. And I actually started writing this book with one sentence in my head. It just kind of stood there in my head, and it's the first sentence of the book. And it's Abby was 38 when she decided God did not put her on this earth to be unhappy. And I had that sentence rolling around in my head for a long time, and it raised a lot of questions for me, like, how did Abby get here? What drove her? Why did she marry him? Why did she stay so long? What is she going to do? Where is she going? In any event, she leaves him in sort of the middle of the night. He's preparing for a trial. She leaves him a note on the bedstand and says, basically, goodbye. She moves on, and she takes up with her boss at the resort. And I think like most women who are the sort of the other woman and take up with a married man, they harbor hopes that one day they will be the next Mrs. Smith Jones Brown. Yeah. And it doesn't work out that way for her. The wife is the wife of the CEO is a very beautiful woman, and after a while she basically lets Abby know that she knows what's going on, and it's fine with her, and that there's only one condition for her continuing to carry on with the woman's husband, and that is that she share her charms with the wife as well. And so the story proceeds from there. She has to make that decision, and then we see what happens when that decision is made. Meanwhile, the husband, Tim, there's a lot of sort of ethnic flavor in his character. He's Greek. He can't get over the fact that he's been left behind. He has trouble establishing new relationships. He is haunted by nightmares night after night in which he sees Abby with nameless, faceless strangers enjoying what she never enjoyed with him. And part of the story is how he overcomes this, whether he will overcome it, with whom, and how. And so you have these two parallel plot lines involving both halves of a marriage that falls apart, and neither one of the parties here is what I would call heroic, obviously. There's a certain ambiguity in terms of, I hope, the reader's reaction to the characters. But that's the story.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful story. It's a compelling story. I think it really drags people in. Um, is it in part based on real life experiences of people you know or you've witnessed, that kind of thing?
Well, what's the statistic that nearly 50% of American marriages fall apart
Hmm.
at some point, and everybody knows somebody who's been divorced. So you can draw on that experience, but that part of the story is not particularly based on any specific individuals in my past. Now, the character Tim as a lawyer in Washington, D.C., that's what I did for more than 40 years. So a lot of what you see, excuse me, in terms of his work environment,
Mhm.
in terms of his interactions in the law firm, in terms of his interactions with staff at the law firm, and what goes on at social events in the law firm. A lot of that was drawn from experiences that I had over the course of 40 or 45 years working in law firms. I am not Tim Stavros. He's
Right.
not.
It's just based on your work as an attorney and
Right,
what you've
right.
learned and experienced along the way. Love the title, Triangles of Fate. You want to elaborate on it a little bit?
Sure, sure. I had a hard time coming up with a title for this book, and we actually sat around the dinner table at home, my wife and the three kids, and my children have not read the book. My wife has read the book, but I described the basic plot line to them. And so, what you have here a number of triangles. You have Tim and Abby and the CEO. You
Mhm.
have Abby, the CEO, and the CEO's wife. You have Tim, Abby, and at one point there is another woman who is interested in him, but he just can't overcome his uh, sadness
Mhm.
at his wife having left him. And then there's Tim, Abby, and then another woman with whom Tim eventually is able to establish a relationship. But there's also another triangle, and that triangle is Tim, Angela, who is his ultimate soulmate and Angela's ex-husband.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of triangles here, and they all have a different fate awaiting them at the end of the book.
Absolutely. And with all these different triangles, with all the different elements, sexual intrigue and so forth, have you envisioned this as a series or movie, perhaps?
Well, it's not going to be a series because if you've read the book, you know there aren't a lot of characters left at the end.
Right. Although it takes a lot of episodes in order to flush out a book sometimes.
Well, you
Yeah,
can. But it has been suggested to me that it might make a good movie, but
yeah.
I don't know if the publisher has much interest in pushing it, and the publisher holds the movie rights right now on it. So.
Okay. Well, you never know whose hands it's going to wind up in. You never know. Nolan might pick it up one day and like, hey,
I don't think so.
one never knows. Do one, as we like to say in the South. Let me ask you this. How important is your setting in the Blue Ridge Mountains?
um, you could set this book anywhere.
Mhm.
I think. I said it where I said it because I know the area. I mean, if you read through the book, if you see people eating in a restaurant, that
Mhm.
restaurant exists.
Yeah,
If you see them ordering a dish, that dish is on the menu
right.
for that restaurant. That holds true both for the restaurants in Virginia and both for the restaurants in the District of Columbia. There's a reference to a gun shop. That gun shop exists. It's on Route
Mm.
29 outside of Warrenton,
Yeah.
where Angela and her husband would target shoot on Saturdays before they went to Claire's at the depot in Warrenton to have lunch. So it gave me comfort to be able to write about background facts
Mhm.
with which I had firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And though being having those characters in the settings that you're very familiar with kind of just makes it feel very organic and real to you, and you're writing dialogue and so forth,
Right.
and descriptions as well. So do you have the bug now? Your wife nagged you, which is what I think wives do. Most are professional nags. They go,
I
now I'm going
said,
to get
by the
into
way,
trouble.
I say that affectionately,
And
right?
I say it affectionately too. But any more books in you?
Oh yeah, I have two.
Okay.
One has been submitted to the publisher, and I just heard back from them, and they're offering me a contract on
Great.
it. And that book is called The Last Martini.
Okay.
And it starts with a woman who is married to a lawyer. That you see a theme here, right? But she's very he is absorbed in his career. He's always on the road. He's always away. The wife feels abandoned. She gets invited to a party at her neighbor's home. It's kind of a summer kickoff party, a pool party. She doesn't want to go, but her best friend convinces her to go. Before the night is over, she ends up in bed with both of her neighbors, the husband and the wife. And when she wakes up in the morning, they're both dead. And there is no sign of a struggle. There are no visible wounds, and the only thing that connects the two corpses is her.
Wonderful.
The police come, and the story kicks off from there, and that she's the prime suspect. It turns out that she actually gave them the instrument of death. Before they turned in, they all had a nightcap, and she mixed the martinis for them. She didn't have a martini. She had a Greyhound, vodka, not gin.
Right.
And that's why the title is The Last Martini. It's the last martini that the Millers ever imbibed. And it goes on from there to examine the investigation and to try and figure out how this happened and who did it and whether justice will out in the end. The second book, which is pretty much done, draws more on what I've done over the course of my career. I represented defense contractors for a long time, companies that built destroyers and satellites and combat fighters and bombers. Actually, I've been in the stealth bomber. That was part of my career. But the CEO is a young woman. She's in her 30s. She was left the company by her grandfather. It's privately held. He bypassed his son, made his granddaughter the CEO, and on New Year's Eve, she's looking up at the ceiling in her home, and she's dead. And it's after a party, a New Year's Eve party. And so then the book kicks back to a year before, when she is deciding that she wants to sell her stock in the company because it's draining her, it's changing her for the worse. She can't stand it anymore. And there is a parallel plot line of a vice president who falsified some test records on a satellite program. And then there's a woman who is taking up with the CEO's father, and the CEO's immediate subordinate is having an affair with the woman who's taking up with his boss. And as the CEO announces that she is selling her stock, everybody has fear and shock, and they want to jockey for the top spot in the company. And that's the story.
Wonderful. Well, they both sound like terrific stories. The Last Martini really rings a bell with me. I had my last martini 5 years ago, and I really miss them. I got to tell you that, John. That's for sure. The name of the book we've been focused on today is called Triangles of Fate. It's an amazing book. It explores the intricate web of destiny and drama. It is set in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is just a terrific locale. If you don't know about it, you should. It's great. And it is a book that is a gripping tale that deals with fate and consequences. John, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate your time. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.